Hello, and welcome to another episode of Movies That Make Us. I'm Jake.
I'm Tracy.
And I'm Val.
And today we are going to be talking about Christmas movies, but with a little bit of a twist. We're not talking about the classics like It's a Wonderful Life, A Christmas Story, National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, the ones that you watch over and over again. We're talking about some that we think are pretty good that maybe get overlooked a little bit. Maybe they're not as overly Christmas as some of those other movies, but we still think they're pretty good and worth watching. And so we've each picked one or two movies that we're going to talk. Oh man. Tracy's all decked out today. He's at Ebenezer. He's got a hat. He's going to break out into song in a minute. It's going to be awesome.
There is going to be
we are talking about some movies that we've kind of picked that we enjoy watching that maybe you don't necessarily think of as your go-to Christmas movie, but maybe you should. Maybe you should. So we'll start with the one that Tracy picked because we've got three to talk about today. And Tracy, why don't you share with us the movie that you picked and why you picked this particular one?
So I went with the most Christmassy movie of the three, I feel. I went with the Albert Finney musical Scrooge.
Okay.
And now this is one, there's a lot of different Scrooge stories. There's a lot of different takes on A Christmas Carol. Guy Pearce did one last year that was on TNT that was supposed to be really dark and weird. Patrick Stewart did a great one. Muppet Christmas Carol is genius. The Disney Christmas Carol is great. There's so many, but for some reason, Scrooge kind of falls into the not watched or appreciated quite as much. And I mean, it is a little dated. It was mid 70s. So, some of the special effects don't hold up particularly well, but there are some that I love the ghost carriage that comes through Scrooge's living room. It reminds me of the Haunted Mansion at Disney. It was I could totally see something like that.
Yeah, that's funny that you said that. When we watched it the other night in preparation for this, that was my first thought. I was like, that could be something that you would see right in the Haunted Mansion in Disneyland or Disney World because it looked just like that.
Yeah, and I gotta say, this is one that I kind of grew up on. We discovered it probably when I was a teenager, and my mom loved Albert Finney as an actor and found this film. And so it kind of became a Christmas tradition at my house. And I hadn't seen it for a couple of years when I rewatched it last night. And so it was just bringing back all the feels, man. I'm all the memories. But there's some really cute songs in this one. And I feel like it's my favorite version of Scrooge, the character.
Okay. Yeah. Watching it, I think I had at least heard of it and obviously familiar with the story. I mean, that's the thing. If you watch it, It's a story because it's a Christmas Carol, and they don't really go outside the bounds of the story at all. It's not like they add a whole lot into it or anything like that.
It's very faithful to the book. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you watch it, it's going to be familiar and comfortable if you haven't seen it before. There are some catchy songs. There are some other songs that are kind of just, they fall flat a little bit. Yep. I will say when he's singing I Hate People, I'm like, this is totally my jam. Sometimes I could definitely feel that way. But also I knew the song, the Thank You Very Much. Thank you very much. I did not realize that one of the scenes that they sing that in is when he's dead. And I'm like, this is a very morbid song now because it's thank you for dying. We're just glad you're dead. That's the best thing you've done for us. So
I think a lot of the songs in this movie could be used in 2020 for various things that have happened this year.
Yes.
I'm watching it and I messaged you guys and I was like, am I watching the right movie? Because I didn't expect all of the songs, and then I didn't expect them to be so rude. I was like, okay. But yeah, that one, and then all of the stupid kids that I'm sorry, I just wanted to punch in the face that they're following him as he's singing I Hate People. I'm like, I would too if I had these stupid kids following me and taunting me everywhere I went. Where are their parents? Where can you send them to jail? Is there a place for these people?
It's Dickens' ruffians. That's who those kids are.
Well, yeah, I love the romanticized. London that people paint for A Christmas Carol. Like Dickens is writing it in the middle of filthy London in the middle of the 19th century, where it's just gross and dirty and awful. And then we make the Christmas story or A Christmas Carol over and over again, and it's like pretty, and I mean it's dark-ish, but it's not like the kids are all clean, and so I'm like, this is not the London that Dickens wrote about in A Christmas Carol or any of his books.
But speaking of those kids real quick, did anybody think that the redhead turns out to be Scott Farkus years later in A Christmas Story?
You mean Scott Farkus? His name is Scott. S-C-U-T.
Right. Yes.
I had no idea.
Scott.
My whole life, I thought it was Scott Farkus, and I found out watching it with captions on that it was Scott. I'm like, that can't be right. Looked it up on IMDb. It is Scott. S-C-U-T.
Wow.
And he has yellow eyes. Yellow eyes.
Kid. I was like, yep, that's Scott Farkus.
So it was funny when we were watching, you mentioned it being mid-70s. There's something about period piece movies that are made in the 70s that you can immediately place them as being made in the 70s. Like immediately, it's the hairstyles. They do something with the clothes. So it's like, we're like kind of making this period old-timey, but we're not. It's the Little Prairie or Little House on the Prairie effect, where like you watch it and you're like, yeah, this is 70s all the way.
That's a good point.
I think I did this movie a disjustice because I'd never seen it before, which is weird because I do like musicals. I do like Albert Finney. He's one of my favorites. Like I used to have a huge crush on him. And I'd never seen this, but I watched it immediately after watching the last episode of The Mandalorian, which kind of made everything suck. I was like, maybe I need to step away and watch something else and then come back to this because I was just like unimpressed with everything. It did remind me of Oliver, though. Do you remember the musical Oliver? Like I used to watch that all the time, and I was watching this, and I was like, "Oh, this is giving me some Oliver vibes." But yeah, I do think it was really muddy. I think the coloring of the movie was really muddy. Yeah, like I understand that it's supposed to be dirty and during that time, but if you kind of compare it to Oliver, it does also have the dark gray tones and the dirty and stuff. But did you feel like it was muddy? Like
I've always kind of felt that way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if it's an intentional on the colorization or I mean the colorizing,
or just because it was made in the 70s.
Made in the 70s and it aged, and nobody's taken the time to fix it.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Albert Finney, like I knew who Albert Finney was going into it, and watching him play Scrooge, I just thought, was he always just old? Because like I know Albert Finney like late in his life, Albert Finney, and like that's who I'm most familiar with. And I'm like, was he like 170 when he died? And so I like looked it up, and obviously it was makeup in here, and he does a great job as Scrooge. Like he overplays it, but he does it in a way that it is almost endearing by the end of the film, and you just enjoy his portrayal. I think I enjoyed it quite a bit.
I love the fact, because to me this is like the dirtiest, grungiest, meanest, most despicable Scrooge out there. Like Michael Caine still has dignity, you know?
Yeah.
Patrick Stewart is still,
I mean, he's Patrick Stewart.
Yeah.
It's hard to wash the dignity off of Patrick Stewart.
Finney is just this crippled, warped little man, and he's so mean and awful. But then I love the character arc, because at the end, when he does, after the Ghost of Christmas Future comes, he is so childlike. When he goes into the toy store and he's picking out all the toys for all the kids, it's delightful to me. I think that's fantastic acting.
I agree. It is really impressive for him to go from the hunched over, mean, decrepit Scrooge, and then at the end playing the Scrooge that's dancing through the streets dressed as Father Christmas, and to do it in a way that you feel like this is the same character who's just grown.
He's not doing backflips and cartwheels.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, as he's singing the song at one point, when he stops to say Merry Christmas a couple of times, like he is like out of breath. And I thought, is he like having a heart attack? Is Scrooge going to die like right here on the spot? Which for a guy who just would hobble around the streets to all of a sudden be dancing, you know, but it is a good portrayal of the character, because all of a sudden be up and dancing around and running through the streets. You're not like, anyway, it was a small detail that I thought added to the character a little bit.
I like that.
But I enjoyed his character arc too. I love the scene where he's with the ghost of Christmas Present.
Yeah.
And he's at his nephew's party and they're playing the minister's cat game, and he's like participating, he's like following along with it, and he's just so excited and into it. And you can kind of see that growth starting to happen with him. And I like that a lot. And
he's thanking all the guests that came to his nephew's party.
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, and it's fun because he gets to that state, and then that's when it transitions into the ghost of Christmas is yet to come.
Yeah.
And that's the state of mind that he's in when they're singing the thank you very much song, and he thinks that they're actually praising him. Like, I love it when he's giving the speech, and as they're cheering, it's because he's dead and he doesn't even realize it. Yeah.
They're ripping up the debt book.
Yeah, the debt book. So there's a lot to it. I will say that I was really impressed with the musical number at the beginning where he's singing about hating people, and they've got the kids following him around, Father Christmas, and how well that matches up with the big musical number at the end. So it's like these two bookends of this big musical number where it's kind of the same themes. And yes, they're following him around singing Father Christmas, but then at the end they're following him around because he's dressed as Father Christmas, and now he is, this embodiment of Father Christmas. And I thought that was really well done as well. What really surprised me is my 7-year-old daughter came in while we were watching it, and sat and ended up watching the whole thing with us. And it's not a short movie. I mean, it's
a couple hours.
Yeah. And I was like, she's going to get bored with this and probably leave. And she didn't. She sat and watched the whole thing with us. And then after that, she was like, I'm going to watch the Christmas carols on Disney Plus. And so she went and watched the Muppet Christmas Carol and Mickey's Christmas Carol, and then the Jim Carrey one that's on Disney Plus. And then this morning she wanted to watch Scrooge again. She's like, yeah, this is my favorite of the Christmas carols. And I'm like,
oh.
And we just rented it. So I'm thinking now we have to go buy it because she liked it as much as she did.
It's on Plex for free. So
is it?
if you have Roku, you can get, I mean, there's some commercials. That's how I watched it. There was a few commercials that I had to see, but it was on Plex for free.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that was her favorite. That was her favorite of the Christmas Carol movies that she's seen. And so I'm like, well, obviously this is going to become a tradition in our house to watch it every year. And it wasn't bad. It was fun. My 4-year-old came in, and he was like, he came in at the scene where they were looking in the Cratchit's house after it was Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come. And he's looking in the house, and there's the crutch and everything. And he's like, oh, that's the Mickey family that he's looking at. We're like, yep. And he's like, and that's the Uncle Scrooge character. Yeah, that's Scrooge McDuck's character. And then it showed the Ghost of Christmas Is Yet to Come. He's like, oh, him is Pete. Yep, that's the Pete. And then he started telling us everything that was going to happen for the end of the story. And like, we had no idea that he had watched Mickey's Christmas Carol enough that he was that familiar with the story, but he totally knew what was going on and was right into it. But I think that that's a testament to this being so true to the source material. Not that Mickey's Christmas Carol is the source material, but those are both.
What are you saying right now?
That is not the original Christmas Carol. I know, it's weird. But both of those are true to the story. And so when you watch this, it does feel comfortable right away, even if you've never seen it. And then it adds some music that there are parts that are delightful where you want to get up. I didn't get up and start dancing around with him.
I love Life Song. I think that song is great. The Ghost of Christmas Present is just so much fun. But we haven't talked about the Ghost of Christmas, the Ghost of Jacob Marley, Sir Alec Guinness.
Yes.
Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Here he is playing a ghost again, giving wise advice. Apparently this was what he did at the end of his career, playing ghosts. I
think he enjoyed playing this ghost better than the other one.
Oh, he was having a ball with this ghost. Yeah.
Well, I think when you're a classically trained actor like Alec Guinness, I think there are certain stories that you just want to be part of. And I think A Christmas Carol is one that, like, big budget Christmas Carol. Yeah, I want to be part of that. Like, I want to participate in that. And so I think you do have a good time with it. And you could tell some of his stuff was cheesy. My wife hates the part where he starts screaming because Scrooge doesn't believe that it's him, and he's like, "Argh!" Like lifts up off the ground, and she's like, "What is going on?" But overall, like it is Alec Guinness, but it takes you a minute if you don't know that to really place that it's him, because it doesn't look like Obi-Wan and it doesn't sound like Obi-Wan because he's doing a different voice. It's just, but it's well played.
That would have been really funny though if like all of a sudden like this lightsaber came out.
Ebenezer's like, "What should I do?" He's like, "Use the Force, Scrooge."
Right?
Yeah,
I probably would have enjoyed the movie a little bit more than I did.
That's a whole different movie, yeah. But I'd watch it. I'd totally watch it.
It's a different Star Wars Christmas special for sure. Let's recast the Christmas Carol and all Star Wars characters.
Craig Price. Calling Craig Price.
I do want to say, if you are a fan of the Christmas Carol and your daughter seems to be now like a super fan, the Megaplex is doing something really cool where they're actually showing Hale Center Theaters a Christmas Carol on the big screen in case you can't go to Hale Center Theater because, you know, COVID and everything, and it's pretty neat. So,
cool. Nice. That's something worth checking out.
People at Megaplex do a great job. And they're not a sponsor. That's an honest.
But they could be if they'd like to be. We wouldn't say no.
We are open to that.
There's the shameless plug. I'll throw it in there. I don't mind.
I went with this one for a couple reasons. One, the fact that it's not as well known. It is a little bit more direct tie into Christmas, but you know, it's been 2.5 years since I lost my mom, and this was her favorite Christmas movie. She hated A Christmas Story. Like, she could not stand A Christmas Story, and it blew my brother and I away. But she loved this one. So it was nice. Thanks for letting me revisit it, you guys.
It was fun to visit. I thought I had seen most of the Christmas Carol versions out there, but this is one that I had heard of that I hadn't seen. And it was fun. I mean,
and now you're going to be watching it for the rest of your life.
Yeah. I mean, my daughter's going to want to watch it every year now.
Until your daughter goes off to college.
I honestly think that I would have enjoyed watching it more if I would have seen it with Tracy, because I think that would have been the fun energy that Tracy brings to loving this film so much. I also think I wish I would have watched it last week instead of this week, because I screened a lot of really bad movies also this last week. And so I had like a lot of bad taste in my mouth. And then, I watched it post Mando, and it just like, I don't know. It was a little bit hard for me to get through. It didn't like suck at all. It just, I don't think I was in the, how you can be in like not the right frame of mind, the right mood for it. And then after I finished watching that, I just watched like a ton of British movies. It got me in the mood. So I just went to the PBS channel and I watched just a ton of British movies, which was great. And TV shows. My dog's at 11:30. They're like, "You're usually in bed by now. It's time to go to bed." I'm like, but it's a weekend night. So, but I mean, it wasn't horrible, but I don't know. It wasn't great for me this time around. Yeah. It wasn't great for me this time around.
Yeah. I mean, I think
humbug. I feel like the Scrooge of this.
I found out this year, and I never knew this, but bah humbug was actually a term that was used back then, and it was basically meant BS.
Yeah.
Which I didn't know. I thought it
even more.
Well, and they use it like that in this film, because when the ghosts come up, he's like, "You're all humbugs. You're all," and it was like they use it as kind of in that way. So
yeah.
I liked it. Like I said, it doesn't replace Muppet Christmas Carol as my favorite of the Christmas Carol movies. Right. But it is true to the story, and it's one of my favorite Christmas stories. I think there's just something that is just so great about the idea that your heart can change, that it's not too late. You can make the world a better place by just making yourself better and doing what you can to improve.
And even a person as awful as Ebenezer can change.
Yeah, and I think also that's worth noting, these ghosts show up and put all this effort to help him change. Even a person like Ebenezer Scrooge is worth changing and worth, no, everybody's got worth, and it's worth changing and saving almost. And I just like the story. My daughter loves it, so this is obviously going to be like a solid B at our house, that we're going to watch it every year, and it's going to be part of our Christmas rotation, which we weren't expecting. But I'll be honest, it's not the only movie out of the ones that we've picked that is now going to be part of our Christmas rotation. And that brings us to your pick, Val.
Do we want to rate his movie first, though?
So I don't know if okay, we'll give it a grade.
We can grade.
What would you give?
You just called it a solid B, so you graded it already.
I did grade it already. That's true. Well, yeah, but nobody. Obviously,
my
grade is the only one that matters.
Okay.
Sorry, not my intention. Val, what would you give for a grade on this movie?
I give it a C plus. I give it a C plus.
C plus.
Okay.
Yeah. And Tracy, this was your movie. What would you grade it?
On an overall movie level, I'd go B plus on this one. It's a fun. It's different. It is dated, so you got to kind of know that going into it. It is a musical, so you got to kind of know that going into it. I think Albert Finney is. Yeah, we didn't warn Val in advance. That's so true. But Albert Finney is just delightful in this. The songs are pretty catchy for the most part. And I'm going to give it a B plus as a film, as a Christmas tradition. I'll actually bump it up to an A minus.
Awesome.
Awesome.
So this isn't the only film that's probably going to be added to my Christmas rotation at our house. And that brings us to Val's film. See how we pretended like the last part didn't even happen? Val, what movie did you pick for us to talk about?
Very professional of you.
Thank you.
I picked The Holiday, which is actually not just one of my favorite Christmas movies, but I watched this movie all year long. It takes place during Christmas, so it's not one that people actually think about, but I have a love for Jack Black, and I loved him before this film because he made me laugh and everything, but then seeing him in this movie, I just had the biggest crush on him, and it has never gone away. It just gets bigger and bigger. But I'm not sometimes when Jude Law. So we've got Jude Law, Cameron Diaz, Jack Black, and oh my gosh, I love
Kate Winslet.
Kate Winslet. I love her. I love Kate Winslet all the time, and I love Jack Black all the time. But there are times in movies that I don't love Cameron Diaz and I don't love Jude Law. For me, those two actors, I either really like them in the role or I really don't. 100%. There's no middle row. And I feel like this is such a great cast because it shows all of these actors playing a part they've never played before. Do you know what I mean? Jude Law, he hasn't played this character. He cries more in this movie than I think I've ever seen him cry ever. And it works. And Cameron Diaz plays this character that's a little more vulnerable because she always plays kind of a strong female character. But she plays one in a very different way. I love Kate Winslet. And again, I love Jack Black, but I don't know what it is about this movie. It just makes me really happy. Really happy.
Yeah, I agree. This was one that we'd heard about. I never went and saw until we picked it for this episode. And then my wife and I sat down and watched it. We're like, okay, we're going to watch that every year now because it was just so enjoyable and just it was just good and uplifting. And you just felt good. And I'll be honest, Jude Law, you brought up his character when he first appears. I'm like, this guy's going to be a jerk because he shows up totally drunk and he's been picking up ladies at the bar. And man, was that one of the biggest swerves in storytelling that I had seen in a long time. And I loved it because he ended up being this great character, single dad, just trying to make it after his wife had passed away. I loved his character way more than I thought I would when he first appeared on screen. So
the premise of the movie is Cameron Diaz is, and I love this because when is this ever been portrayed in a movie. She's a trailer cutter. She is a person that cuts together movie trailers. That is an actual job, which I would love, by the way. And
totally.
she's very successful at it, so much that she has like a studio at her house. Christmas is the busiest time of year for trailers because a lot of movies, you know, going on. I totally love that. Her boyfriend, who is, what's his name? They've been in a movie before. I can't think of his name. He always plays a jerk most of the time.
Yeah.
But so he ends up cheating on her, and she says, I need to take a break. I need to go on vacation. And her staff is like, what? You never take a break. You never go on vacation. She doesn't know how to cry. That's one of the things her boyfriend is like, you can't even cry. And this is like, you know, so this is her one thing she can't do. So she gets online and she tries to figure out where she's going to go because she just has that kind of time and money that she can just pick whatever. And she ends up connecting with Kate Winslet's character, who is all the way across the pond. And she,
I love that term.
Across the pond.
I love it.
She's a character that has something going on that I think a lot of people can relate to, and that's being in love with the wrong person. And she just can't stop like feeding into him using her. And then she's an editor of the wedding section at her local newspaper. And it ends up being where the guy she's in love with, she has to write his wedding announcement. So she goes home. She's totally devastated. They meet online and they house swap, which I just think is, I don't know, like it's very original. I like it. It hasn't been done.
It's a unique take on the body swap film.
Yeah, I mean, so they house swap, and like Cameron Diaz lives in Beverly Hills in this huge mansion, and Kate Winslet lives in this little cottage in the middle of nowhere in Surrey. And I have to say, I kind of like Kate Winslet's house better than I do Cameron Diaz, but I just really love this. And their lives get intertwined. They meet each other's, like, you know, different people. But I love the old guy that Kate Winslet just becomes friends with, the meet cute. Like, I love the he's a writer for films when films were romantic and all of this stuff. And she helps rehabilitate him. And then she meets Jack Black. And one of my favorite scenes in the whole movie is when they go to rent a movie. One, because they're renting a movie in a movie place.
Yep. I was like, oh, Blockbusters. I missed those so much.
I'm like, oh, man, I lived there for a while. Yeah.
But two, like when Jack Black does his Jack Black thing and he's like doodly doo, like he's singing, he's doodly doing all of like the main songs because he's a composer for, you know, he's a movie composer. And right as they're doing Mrs. Robinson, they look over and there's Dustin Hoffman standing there.
Like every time.
It's just those little things in this movie that just make me so happy.
I agree. The old guy Arthur was great. Probably my favorite character in the whole movie. And that's hard because I love Jack Black's character. I loved all the characters in this movie. So what were you going to say, Tracy? I cut you off. I apologize.
Oh, no, you're totally fine. So I'm going to be a little bit of the voice of dissent on this one.
Of course you are.
Hey, she was Scrooge. So I'm going to play the Scrooge role here. I didn't hate it, but this film is really overly long. This movie should have been an hour and a half, and it's almost 2.5 hours. It is so long.
I've never felt that in my life. Oh. Like I have watched this movie back to back 3 times. So like and I'm not a huge rom-com fanatic. Right. Like I usually would watch the musical or Die Hard or whatever. But there's just something about this movie that I just love so much. When Cameron Diaz like finally gets to Surrey and she gets to the little grocery store and she's like eating things as she's putting them in her basket and opens up the wine. She's like, why not? You know, and I'm just like, I've been there. I've been in that very spot before.
And the cashier's like, oh, are you having a party? Yeah. That's it.
Definitely having a party.
So there are some very cute moments in this that I enjoyed quite a bit. And I don't mean cute in like a condescending way, but I mean literally, like I really thought they were fun. Like when they're messaging back and forth. First of all, I had no idea that this was a thing. If you're renting a house, like on Airbnb, if it's even possible to be like, oh, this is only for swaps, not like to just, so I have to come stay at your house if you're going to come here. I don't know if that was just made up for the movie, but I loved it.
No,
It made a great
there
premise.
are. My friend Mike does that in California. Yeah. I don't know if the app is the same, but yeah, there are house swaps.
Interesting. But I love the chat back and forth where she's talking, Kate Winslet is like, well, this is my house. It's a little cottage. Where do you live? Well, my house is slightly larger than yours. It's a huge mansion in Beverly Hills. I just thought that was great. The guy that she likes, he's going to be a bad guy because I've never seen him play not a jerk in a film because he's the main bad in A Knight's Tale. He's the knight that going up against, and
he is a good guy. I will find it, but he is. You keep going and I'll find it.
Yeah, but anyway, when he kept popping up, I was like, well, obviously he's a jerk, and he is he's awful to her, and I love when she stands up to him finally at the end of the movie, and she was like, no, I'm not going to do this, and I was like, yeah, that's right. Like I sat up in my bed and my wife's like, are you okay? I'm like, listen, that was great. That was awesome. Because she finally showed that gumption that Arthur kept talking to her about. And I love that at the same moment, Jack Black's doing the same thing with his ex-girlfriend who just cheated on him. And then they meet at the awards and Arthur's theme starts and I'm like crying at that point. I'm like, he's here. He came. It was awesome.
See, I really enjoyed the Jack Black story. The Jude Law, Cameron Diaz story, I just couldn't really get into. Like, there's not a lot of growth there for her character. Like, Kate Winslet has a lot of growth and Jack Black has a lot of growth. And Cameron Diaz, she is kind of an underappreciated actress. She has a limited range. But in that range, she's really good. And this performance kind of made me think of a little bit of My Best Friend's Wedding. She's kind of this sweet, cheery, but I don't know, just the whole relationship for a long time was just built on a physicality. And I just, for some reason, that storyline, I kept wanting to go. I'm like, go back to LA, go back to Kate Winslet, go back to Jack Black.
Interesting. Like, I definitely could have used more of Jack Black and Kate Winslet because I thought Jack Black was so brilliant in this. Yeah. But yeah, like you said, like you're putting your hand. Yeah, I can always use more Jack Black. Yeah. Like any movie could use more Jack Black.
Jack Black is like bacon. You can always have more bacon.
But I did not feel the same way about the Jude Law, Cameron Diaz story. I really enjoyed, especially once she met his daughters. And
the daughters were adorable.
Yeah, and she started. Like, her whole thing was, I don't want to be involved in a relationship. I don't want to make things complicated. But you can see that kind of opening up little by little as the story goes on. And I actually liked their story quite a bit. So that's interesting that you felt that way, Tracy. I didn't feel the same when I watched it. So
I think I do agree. I like Kate Winslet's and Jack Black's story a little bit more. But what I love about Cameron Diaz's character is because I've been there. Like, I've been a woman where you're like, you have to work harder than every person to be good at your job. And you just workaholic. And you think, like she said, like, nobody has time for sex, and he's like, well, that's not true. I think sometimes when you're a woman, and I'm not saying I don't have it, but what I'm saying is like, she's been cutting everything out of her life.
Yeah.
Like, she's focused on work. Yes, she has a person, but she focused, and I've been there, like where I focused all on work and I have a person, but not really paying attention to them. And then she goes out there and she realizes that there's more to life than what she's been doing. And she meets these little girls and she's wearing the totally wrong outfit because she doesn't know, that he has these kids. And then she lays down in their amazing fort. Like, whoever built that fort, I want that fort in my house. And the little girls are just taken with her and she realizes, wait a second, like, there's more to life than what I've been doing. And when they go to have their awkward, lunch together, when they've already been physical, like you said, it was mainly like this physical attraction kind of whirlwind. And they realized, well, our lives don't really fit together. But then they realized, but we really love each other. So we're going to figure it out. And so it's not as practical and it's not as romantic as the other relationship, but I do like the fact that she kind of had these little aha moments. And I think he did as well. Like, being a dad with two kids, he thought he had to separate those things. Like when my parents have them, I go on the weekends and I'm just a totally separate person, but it wasn't making him happy, like being that, totally separate person.
I do think the Jude Law character, one thing that I will say about it is he was maybe just a little too perfect. Like he had an obvious flaw in like that he would go to the bars on the weekend when his parents had the girls and, pick up women and all of that. But it wasn't really as emphasized as some of the other flaws that the characters had. And then as she got to know him more and more, I'm like, okay, so he's a great dad and he's incredibly good looking and he's got a really good job. And like everything just kept adding on where he was just, he's the great looking guy who's great in bed, but he also does Mr. Napkin Head for his daughters. Like it was just a little much. I was like, really like, he's just too perfect, but that's okay. Cause it's a romantic comedy. So it didn't detract from the story too much, but still he was pretty perfect.
I think it's funny. A trailer editor and a book editor are not having those kind of houses in England and in Los Angeles. I'm just saying, like even at the height of the movie boom. What's that?
She was really good at her job though. She was the best.
That movie that she was editing, why didn't that movie come out
with James Franco
and
Lohan? I will also
let's
say
make it more red, not like Die Hard red or let's make it Christmassy red. What did she say? Not a director. She said not Scorsese red.
Scorsese red, yeah.
So I will say that one of my favorite things about this movie though is when she would think in the trailer voice. And like it would dub over like she thought her life was perfect, but she was wrong. And she like rolls her eyes and she's thinking about it. And I just thought I was like, that's just great because it was the total trailer thing and it was perfect. So Jack Black though is awesome in this. My wife does not typically like Jack Black. She thinks he's a little too off the wall. And usually the characters that he plays are a little too off the wall. She really, really liked him a lot in this movie because it is very different from what we typically see. Yeah.
I thought it was brilliant because it showed that he could still be him. He was not being him as an actor. He still, you could tell that but I lost myself in him. Like this character wasn't unbelievable. He's the friend of Cameron Diaz's ex-boyfriend. He goes over to pick something up and he's just a friendly guy that has conversations that's also in love with the wrong person, which the girl that he's in love with is also in A Knight's Tale with the cheater boyfriend on Kate Winslet's side. They're in that movie together. They're both jerks and they're both in that movie together. So
perfect.
Well, I kind of got the feeling like this is more of what Jack Black is in real life. The Jack Black that we all know and love is like the amplified, turned up to 11 version.
Have you seen him on Instagram? On Instagram, he's in his underwear all the time, doing crazy stuff.
And it kind of makes me think of like Dwayne The Rock Johnson, where there's like his rock character was cranked up to 11. But then there's the real him. And I kind of got the feeling like this is how Jack Black actually is.
Yeah. And I think there's
crazy.
I love the man for sure.
No, I do too. I just think I think at home he needs a Valium to set him down. I bet at home he's like ding 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 ding.
I don't know. It's hard to know. I think a lot of these people I don't know. Yeah. I think a lot of celebrities put out a public persona.
I might get arrested, but I'm going to find out.
Well, you have firsthand experience. We have not run through the streets of Park City with Jack Black. No.
Oh.
Tom Holland much, huh?
I didn't stalk Tom Holland.
She didn't even put him in his backpack when she had a chance.
I don't. That's creepy because he's just a kid. He's 22, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Jack Black did a Spider-Man thing, and him in spandex is fantastic.
So let's give this movie a grade. Tracy, what would you grade The Holiday?
Like I said, the Cameron Diaz Jude Law storyline just didn't quite work for me. Overall, the girls were adorable. I'm a huge fan of Kate Winslet. I love just about everything that she's in and done. I like Jack Black. Nancy Meyers isn't my favorite director. It was a little too much on this is how Hollywood used to be and it's not anymore. And it was like I could feel her voice instead of it being part of the story. And it's really, really long. Like if I start noticing edits in this film or lack of edits, that means that I'm not being entertained and engaged. And I kept finding myself of all the things that I could cut. And every time that Cameron Diaz went up to a fence and paused and smiled over the English countryside, I'm like, that's 20 minutes right there.
Wow.
I gotta earn the Ebenezer name here for this.
Yeah,
one.
You're doing a good job.
I'm gonna go B- on this one.
Okay. Val, we'll do you last because this was your movie. Sorry, I was going to go to me next. I would give this a solid B+ range. We enjoyed it. My wife and I really liked it. This is one, like, there are certain movies that you can get really caught up in the Christmas movies and you're watching Christmas movie after Christmas movie after Christmas movie. This one is a nice kind of palate cleanser because even though it takes place during the holidays, it's not like in your face Christmas.
Right. Right.
And so it's kind of nice because you feel like I'm still watching a Christmas movie, but it's not overly Christmassy. And I just love Jack Black. And the fact that he gets Kate Winslet at the end of this movie just made me happy because he's not the typical Hollywood leading man, but he should be because he's an incredible actor and incredible talent. So overall, yeah, probably a B+ for me.
Yeah, I give it a solid A. I mean, I don't care that I'm a film critic and that it hits all these tropes. I don't feel that it's long. I can watch this movie over and over and over. It makes me happy. If I'm having a bad day, like, I can just turn it on and I'm in a good place. I feel like because Jack Black it does show his range in such an easy way. Like, it just seems effortless, this character for him, where you would think that this is him in real life. It didn't seem like it was this huge stretch for him to play, but it doesn't match up with really a lot of his other characters that he's played. Kate Winslet is amazing. I love their whole storyline. I just think I also think it was, as much as there are tropes in this movie for romantic comedies, it's an original story.
It subverts a lot of the tropes too. I mean, like Jake said, having the dad with 2 kids. So there is that. And I didn't hate it, but it didn't quite work for me. But
I honestly think this movie, out of all 3 of us, was more made for me than anyone. So it's okay.
Sure. And that's the thing that I love about this show.
I'm the demographic.
I love about the show is we can each have our own opinions. We can each have our own things and be respectful. It didn't work for me, but it works for you. And I think that's awesome. And you don't get very many A's. So you to give this an A, that is...
Yeah. Well, I just think every time I've told someone about this film and they're like, I just really don't like Jack Black. And I'm like, just please try it. Just give it a try. And then when they come out at the end of it, they're like, okay, I really like Jack Black. And I just, so for me, that's an A in itself, because I do think that people put him, like Cameron Diaz, they kind of put them in this little area and they leave him there. But no, he's so great. So great.
And they give a shout out to Mission.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say they give a shout out to a movie we've already covered, The Mission. So that was fun.
Yeah. They do.
And I love the fact that he's a composer and he's like, this score right here, this score. I'm like,
He's really good. I like that, Val, that you said on the other side, they come out and they're like, yeah, I do like Jack Black. And then do you hand them Nacho Libre? You're like, okay, well then watch this.
If you don't like Jack Black after Nacho Libre, I don't know that I can be friends with you.
Yeah, Nacho Libre is great. We need to cover that one sometime.
It's just silly. Yes, can we please
yes.
cover it? Can we have a Jack Black month? Could we just do?
We need
Jack
to.
Black?
We've talked about it before. I think we've talked about it on the air. Maybe January needs to be Jack Black month.
Yes, we need to start 2021 outright with Jack Black.
January is usually bleak and cold, and it's a letdown after the holidays. So I'm great doing some Jack Black movies. That worked for me.
All right,
best Christmas present ever.
Perfect. So that brings us to my film, which is also a romantic comedy, and I think it's one that people watch, but you don't necessarily think of it as a Christmas movie, even though it takes place at Christmas time. But I picked While You Were Sleeping. And for me, it does check a lot of the boxes for a good Christmas movie. It happens at Christmas time. It takes place in Chicago. I don't think John Hughes wrote or anything on this one, but he could have, because it is in Chicago, which for me, because of John Hughes and all the movies that he did that are Christmas movies, Chicago's always linked to Christmas time for me. I'd love to go there at Christmas time, which is probably the worst time to travel to Chicago, but
it's cold. Your lungs hurt. They will hurt.
Yeah.
So cold.
But I love this movie. Sandra Bullock in the 90s, like that was one of my big crushes. She was just such a great actress and is a great actress, and just beautiful. And so this is a great film for that. Bill Pullman is a great romantic lead in this as well. Another guy who probably doesn't get a lot of romantic leads, but totally should, because he can play just the average guy that is just lovable and great. And I'll be honest, the Paperboy scene where he slips on the ice, that alone makes this movie so rewatchable. Just that scene, just put it on a loop.
The thing is, I was watching the movie when you had messaged that, and it was like happening, and then I just went rewind.
It is such a great scene because there's no point to it at all. It doesn't have anything to do with the story. It's just, okay, it's morning. Here's the guy delivering the papers. And then he falls on his bike and they just move forward like nothing happened. And it is just so good. But there is a lot about this movie that I love. It's so, the whole premise is insane that you you get roped into this family because a nurse overhears that you said you were going to marry this guy and says you're his fiance and gets into this whole big mess. It's ridiculous, but you love the family, you love the characters, and I think that's what keeps bringing me back to this movie is just how great the characters are and how great the cast is overall.
Well, and everyone in her life that finds out what she's doing are totally okay with her, like, evolving this lie. Like, her boss is like, no, you just need to go through with it. The uncle, who is the goddad, is like, no, you just need to finish this up. Like, and then the nurse finds out and she's like, she's like, everybody wants her to lie. I'm like, you guys are all awful, awful people. But I also love Joe Jr.
Yes, Joe Jr. is so great.
He is such a fun side character. And I love that he's always like pulling up his pants, and then she puts them in the closet. Are you trying on my shoes? And then she just shuts the door on him. Like,
when he's heartbroken at the end and she's like, come in, I'll let you try on my shoes. He's like, okay. I love when Jack, the character, meets Joe Jr. the first time and he asks, oh, do you know Lucy in 201? Know her. I'm dating her. And he's like, and so he confronts her about it because he really believes, And I love that he confronts her because he believes that this guy is dating Lucy. Like, he's met her a couple of times and he thinks this is the guy that she's going to go out with, Joe Jr.
Right.
It's so good. I agree. It is really weird that every time somebody finds out, they're just like, oh yeah, you just got to keep going with it. Like, just keep. And her boss is just so over it though by the end as she keeps trying to tell him, like, and when she brings him the wedding announcement, he's like, wait, this is your wedding invitation. Yeah, I'm getting married. Which one are you marrying? Peter, the guy in the coma? Yeah, the guy in the coma. He's like, wait, what happened to Jack? He didn't want me, all right? And she just like walks out. It's just like, he's like, he's so confused by the end. We're all confused, but it's so great. But it's just a good, fun movie. It's one I know a lot of families watch over and over again every year, but like, this is another one for me that's a good palate cleanser because it does take place at Christmas time, but it's not overly Christmas. And so you can play this when you're kind of just done with the elves and the tinsel and the Santa Claus, like put this one on and it's good to go,
I forgot that it took place during Christmas and I forgot how great it was. And when I was watching it, unlike the holiday, like their side characters are like peripheral view. You see them a little bit, you know a little bit about them, but they're out here. And these side characters, one of my favorite things about it, because it reminds me of like a Disney animated movie where the side characters sometimes are more fun than the main characters because they've thought about them so much. I love her boss. I love the guy that plays her boss. I love his aunt. Something's always going on with her and the mom, and like they're like, okay, tell us how she should be able to prove that she's with him, and she tells him the testicle story. And as a family sitting in this room, they all think it's perfectly fine to check this grown man's testicle in front of everyone. It's not like leave the room, call the doctor in, like there's a medical way to do this. Oh, we're all just going to stay here as you feel your son up. I'm laughing so hard. I just love this.
the way they do it is so great because they're like, well, I'm not going to look. You got to look. And the mom finally, well, I'm his mother. I guess I'll take a look. And then it just cuts to them all walking to the elevator and like, well, we had no idea that like, and it's just so well done. The dinner scene where they're sitting and they're talking about the creamy mashed potatoes and like Cesar Romero being really tall, and Cesar Romero's not Spanish. I never said he was Spanish. I said he was tall. Oh yeah, he's tall, and like just going on and on, and we're it's like that is like a family dinner. It was perfect. It was just really well played.
So now I could be wrong, but wasn't this the first leading film for Sandra Bullock post Speed? Like Speed was her breakout, and I think this was the film that like cemented her as America's sweetheart, because she really was for quite a while. She was the go-to it girl, and she's underappreciated. Like she is so charming and so disarming, and she just fits. She just feels natural. It doesn't feel like she's playing a character. She just is that character.
It was 1994. While You Were Sleeping was 1995. And then she did A Time to Kill in 1996. She also did The Net in 1995. So she did two movies that year. So two totally different roles, obviously, with While You Were Sleeping and The Net. And While You Were Sleeping is the better movie.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think this is definitely the role.
Well. It's been a long time since I've seen it, but
yeah,
that was the early days of the internet.
Right. And so it obviously probably doesn't hold up at all. Like but this does.
This is one where I was working at the video store when this came out, and my mom had wanted to see it, and we never got to see it in the theater. And we got a screener for it early and took it home, and my mom just fell in love with this. And this is one we would watch all the time at home. So it was kind of fun again with like Scrooge. Jake is just feeling that nostalgia but like I said, Sandra Bullock, man, she's just so effortless in this movie, and she's funny and she's quirky and she's charming, and you believe, like you said, I mean, it's a crazy premise, but you believe it.
Totally
like they set it up so well. It makes sense. That's the thing, is it makes sense that she's just talking to herself and saying, I was going to marry that guy. And the nurse is like, oh, and then it just spirals.
And then she gets in trouble again when she's talking to when the young girl and her friends, Mary, I think, and her friends come and visit her in the booth. And then as they're leaving, she turns to her friend. She's like, yeah, I'm pregnant. And so then her friend tells Mary, and then Mary tells everybody else. And so then they're at the party and Jack won't let her drink. And she's like, why? Because you're pregnant. And he shouts it and everybody hears it. She's like, okay, nope. So it's it is a lot of fun because it is kind of this he said, she said, and it just spirals in a game of telephone out of control.
I also think it would be really fun to change all the music from this movie, add in like Hitchcock suspense music, and add a detective character, because she's a freaking stalker. She's been stalking this guy from her work this whole time. She knows the suits that he wears. She knows all the colors of his tie. She knows all these things about him. And then she accidentally envelops herself into his life, gets into his apartment, gets to know his family, and almost marries him. Like, if you changed just the music and added a detective to this film, it could be a different movie, and I would still watch it and love it.
I've never thought of that, but I kind of want to watch that movie.
Like,
you know how they take the trailers of a movie and they'll change like the music to make a funny movie a scary movie? Like, somebody needs to dub, if they haven't, maybe they have already done this, but somebody needs to redub like the premise of this trailer, because she's a freaking stalker.
Yeah, you need that old-timey detective where he's like, I had 6 slugs in me, 5 of them were liquor, 1 of them was bullet,
What?
That Sam Spade detective character. You totally need that. Columbo.
Yeah, it'd be perfect. Yeah, this film is a lot of fun from start to finish. I do love the side characters are great. The story is good. Doesn't make any sense, but it's okay because by the end you're totally bought in. Like when Jack shows up to propose to her and he drops the ring in her little tray, like you're like, oh, of course she's gonna. I mean, that just makes sense because she didn't really wait to see the aftermath of what she had done when she had finally comes clean to the family. She just like assumes they're not going to want anything to do with her. I love like that scene, the wedding scene where she says, I object. Like before he even starts the ceremony, she's like, I have to confess something. I'm in love with your son. We know. That's why we're here. Not that one. That one. They're like, what? Jack, what did you do?
I love, like you said, that scene where he drops the ring in, because she doesn't get the whole emotional teary. He's like, well, can I come in? And she's like, not without tokens. You know, like,
no, I can't let you in. Not without a token. No freebies here.
But I gotta say, Peter Gallagher's eyebrows in this movie.
Oh my gosh.
Chef kiss to that.
I think there could be just a whole edit of just his eyebrows.
Yeah. It's the anti-Henry Cavill beard mustache Superman thing.
Well, he's known for his eyebrows.
His eyebrows are just on point. And I kind of was laughing to myself for that. Sometimes I think really stupid things. But I when every scene where he's in the hospital, I could just hear like the director, okay, no, your motivation is you're in a coma, so just lay there. And that's what I kept thinking of, because he spends so much in the movie that way. But what am I supposed to do this scene?
I love movie portrayals of people in hospitals, because having just spent a few days in the hospital recently, and we've all been there, right? Where we've been like, you're gross, you're dirty, you haven't like, it's just disgusting. But no, when they come into the hospital, he's like, I mean, like you said, his eyebrows even look good. He looks fantastic still.
Well, but the reason he looks good is because the nurses are out fighting over who's going to give him a sponge bath. He's probably so chapped or over lotioned because they've all, like, every 10 minutes they're in there grooming him. Like, his balls were probably the cleanest they'd ever. His mom probably was fine because his balls were the cleanest they've ever been. Like, all the
singular, just one.
I can imagine the scene where they're talking about the testicle, and the nurses are like, "Oh yeah,
oh yeah."
Well, that's true. That checks out. We know. Yeah. Wait, how do you know? Don't worry about it.
I mean, it's our job. Just doing our job. We are thorough. Yeah. We are thorough.
We take pride in our work.
And I love the church scene where they start getting in an argument in the church, and the guy's like, can you just please pipe down? And he's like yelling at him, and it's like in the middle of prayer, they're standing up. And I'm like, that's just awesome. So
I like how you go from cleaning balls to a church scene. That's that's
how I roll. You know, there's no rules.
There's an extreme to Jake. Jake covers the whole spectrum.
That's right. So let's give this one a grade. I think there was one more that Val wanted to mention as well. If I remember
I just had an honorable mention, but yeah, I just wanted to remind people, because I just forgot. Like, as we were doing this research, and then also for my morning show, we were talking about movies that we didn't necessarily think were Christmas movies, but we like them. And yeah, so anyway.
Yeah. So we'll do the honorable mentions here, but Val, we'll start with you on this one. What would you grade While You Were Sleeping?
I give it a B+. Like, I really like this film. I didn't remember how much I liked it until we had to watch it again. And I was like, oh yeah, I really like this. And I forgot this and this. And I would probably watch it again sometime in the next few months. Like, I enjoyed it.
Awesome. Tracy?
I'm also going to go a B+ on this one. It took me back. It was funny how much I remembered of this movie. It had been a long time since I'd seen it. But like I said, Sandra Bullock is just charming as all get out. She took some time away to be with her family from acting, which I totally applaud and appreciate, but I wish we had some more of her. Early 90s Sandra, I'm with you, Jake, had a total crush on her.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. She pushed all the buttons. So it's charming. It's funny. It holds up well. The as crazy as the premise is, it's still believable within the world that they set. Really, really fun little film. Available on Disney Plus streaming, so it's free. If you've got Disney Plus, go check it out. And I'm going to go B+. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it's an A-. I enjoyed it a ton watching it again. We pull it out every Christmas at least and watch it. It's one that my wife grew up watching in her house, and so we'll probably continue that tradition with our family as well. It's just fun. It's just a fun movie. Mm-hmm. I'm entertained from start to finish on it. So, all right, let's talk honorable mentions. Val, what was an honorable mention that you had?
You guys already know that I really like this movie, and it's You've Got Mail with Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan, and it's not a movie that people think about a lot, but it is actually a really good one. And then I was like, oh yeah, it does take place during Christmas for part of the film when she's decorating her bookstore, and it's her, like, it reminded her of her mom, and doing the Christmas decorations and twirls in the store, and all of these things, and then it's such a great. I know that everybody loves Sleepless in Seattle. I actually like this movie more than Sleepless in Seattle. And it also brings you back to the dial-up of the AOL. You're dialing up, and then you got mail and all of that stuff. But outside of that, I feel like this movie holds up a lot. And I just really love that they are creating this relationship without even meeting each other. And then they find out who they are and that they've already met. And I love the ending is like my favorite. He's like, I was hoping it was you. And then she said, I was hoping it was you. And then the dog is there, and then the bridge. And then I just want to cry.
Yep.
So good.
It's a good one. It's a remake based on Shop Around the Corner, an old Frank Capra film.
That's right.
So.
I forgot.
And it's such a great story about the Shop Around the Corner. So yeah, it's really good.
Yep.
That was in the heyday of the Meg Ryan era. She was really the it girl for quite a while. Yeah.
It was pre-plastic surgery Meg.
That's true.
And it was the first heyday of the Tom Hanks. It was the first Tom Hanks heyday era as well.
Yeah.
So I mean, he's had multiple heydays, let's be honest. His whole life has been a heyday. His
career's kind of been this.
Yeah. Every time you think he starts going down, he comes back and he's just amazing still. I do have an honorable mention as well, and I really debated about picking this film, but Batman Returns, and I know that this is silly and funny, but it takes place at Christmas time. To me, I love Batman Returns because out of the two that Tim Burton directed, this was the most Tim Burton Batman film. I mean, they really just let him do whatever he wanted. And it just makes me love it even more. Like, I love the original Batman. It's incredible. And I think it's one of the most perfect superhero movies out there. But this one, I just love realizing it's not as good a movie, but I just love it because it's so much more Tim Burton. So that would be an honorable mention for me. Tracy, I know we might be putting you on the spot. I don't know if you thought of an honorable mention.
I did. So I like as much. I love the traditional Christmas movies. I love, It's a Wonderful Life, which I hadn't seen until a couple of years ago. That's a whole different story, but I do enjoy it. A Christmas Story, all of those. But I do love the unconventional Christmas movie. And this movie came out a couple of years ago, and it's Anna and the Apocalypse, and it's available on Hulu.
I know you love this one.
It is charming. It's funny. It's a zombie Christmas musical. It's set in a high school setting. So it's got Christmas, it's got high school, it's got zombies, and it's disarmingly charming. Like it takes you in places that you don't expect it to go. I don't feel, yes, it's a zombie movie, but it's not overly gory. There's so much heart to that film, and the songs, talk about memorable songs. Like, I love every song on that soundtrack.
Awesome.
I feel like if you had a band in high school, Tracy, it would have been called Disarmingly Charming, because you are very charming.
Oh, that was
like
nice.
A little emo band.
Emo band.
Disarmingly charming, and they're all dressed in black with thick black eyeliner.
Stop.
Well, there you go. If you are in the market for a Christmas movie, you've just watched Elf for the 14th time, or you're getting ready to start your 24-hour Christmas Story marathon, and you want something in between that's a little bit different, we've given you some 6 options here that might cleanse your palate a little bit, or maybe it's something you haven't seen before. A couple of musicals from Tracy, a couple of rom-coms from Val. Like, we've got some good picks here. Hopefully it'll make your season brighter. And if not, we're not in charge of your life anyway. So you got to make your own choices. So.
Go watch the Mandalorian and eat some cake. Yeah. I don't know.
That's right. That's exactly right.
We watched this season over and over. It was a great season of Mando.
It was a great season of Mando.
It's Christmas time. It's weird. It's 2020 Christmas. But man, let's celebrate the heck out of it. Let's get through this year and the New Year's. The vaccine's on its way, so there's hope out there. I love doing this show with you guys. I love our listeners and our viewers. It's just so much fun to come and talk movies with you guys. So Merry Christmas to you.
Merry
Christmas, Tracy.
Wait,
and
we
more
need
important,
to end. We need to end the show with the actual way, Jake. You said you have to end every.
Oh
Christmas
yeah.
show.
We didn't mention that.
let me just say this right now about Scrooge because you're going to be disappointed. Every Christmas Carol movie that I've ever seen ends with Tiny Tim saying, "God bless us, everyone." Not Scrooge. Oh no. And Tracy called it artistic license. That artist should have his license taken away. Just taken away.
All right, Tracy, let's end our show the way it's supposed to be ended, and you can do it.
Thank you very much. Thank
No,
you.
that's not that. No. God bless us, everyone, Tracy.
Oh, sorry. Okay. And a 1 and a 2. God bless us.
God bless us, everyone. Yeah. All right. We won't see you at the movies, everybody. Bye.
This has been a Stolen Droids Media production.